From New York, the former Amsterdam of the New World, we are traveling by airplane to the original Amsterdam of the Old World, and we are now within sight of our destination. Below us, we see the so-called polders, or islands of land, which have been reclaimed from the sea by the industrious Dutch. And there before us is the famous Schiphol Airport, headquarters of the Royal Dutch Airlines, whose planes are appropriately called the Flying Dutchmen, in memory of the fast merchant ships that once achieved supremacy on the sea and helped to make Old Amsterdam the greatest mercantile city in Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries. Thanks to the speed of modern air travel, we have flown about 3,500 miles in less than 18 hours. And we are now motoring into the very center of Amsterdam, where the central railway station engages our attention. Like many of the city's buildings, it is constructed on an artificial island. As a matter of fact, the whole city of Amsterdam might be called a child of the sea, for it is founded largely upon land that was lifted from under the sea and molded into the service of mankind. This reclaimed land naturally created a network of islands surrounded by canals, necessitating a constant flow of boat traffic from one island to another. Flowing like a main street through the heart of Amsterdam is the River Amstel, and this famous waterway, with all its canal-like offshoots, also affords an ideal means of tourist travel in and around the grand old town. The natural soil of Holland is composed of loam and loose sand, and consequently Dutch cities have been constructed on substantial artificial pilework driven deep into the firmer sand beneath. The picturesque old buildings which line the banks of the waterways reflect the patience and tenacity and the power and richness of a race that has spent 2,000 years in a constant struggle with the forces of nature to wrest a great and flourishing land from the sea. As the canals provide the chief means of local transportation, Amsterdam is naturally dotted with interesting old bridges, and this one in particular holds our interest. The unusual manner in which the attendant collects his toll charge from river vessels is a custom that dates back through the centuries. The collector stands like a fisherman dangling a pole to the passing boats, and instead of fish, he collects a toll charge in a tiny basket at the end of his line. This old drawbridge, operated entirely by manpower, is practically a family heirloom, for the job of attending it is handed down from generation to generation of the same family. And so goes the local traffic of the day, back and forth from island to island, while we continue our tour along the waterways, where boats of commerce now mingle with pleasure craft. We are passing a section that was once inhabited by wealthy Dutch merchantmen, but now their former homes have become offices, granaries, manufacturing plants, and warehouses. The land which the Dutchmen struggle so ferociously to gain and work so diligently to keep is rich and fertile and yields fine grains and other important food commodities, which are brought to Amsterdam for milling, packing, and distribution. While the city's unique system of canals is of the utmost importance in time of peace, it is also of great strategic value in time of war, for the whole system of sluices and canals is so organized that Amsterdam could be practically inundated in a matter of hours, leaving nothing to the conquering enemy but the sea from whence the old town was originally created. The canals run in circles around the city, and their banks are invariably planted with elms, providing a picturesque framework for interesting old landmarks along the way, including the Oude Kerk Tower, which dates from the 15th century. Rembrandt Park was set aside in honor of one of Holland's most famous sons, Rembrandt van Rijn, perhaps the greatest painter and etcher that the world has ever known. Born in Leiden on July 15, 1606, the son of a well-to-do miller, Rembrandt began painting while still in his youth, and by the time he had reached the age of 25, his work had already attracted the attention of art lovers in the old city of Amsterdam. At the age of 50, however, Rembrandt became bankrupt, and from then until his death 13 years later, trouble surrounded him. He had outlived his popularity, and his manner of painting was no longer in favor with the people who preferred the smooth trivialities of his more popular contemporaries. Many of his original paintings are contained in the Rijksmuseum, including what has been regarded by many art critics as his masterpiece, the Stalmeesters, which is a representation of the syndics of the Guild of the Clothmakers, or literally stamp masters. In the prevailing hues of the picture and the absence of strong light, the master has succeeded in producing what may be termed as usual poetry of form, combined with the most lifelike fidelity. As a painter, he worked for light and shade rather than color, and his style was not influenced by any one particular school, but was formulated by his own thoughts and observations of the world in which he lived. There are many other famous original paintings by old Dutch masters in the Rijksmuseum, outstanding among which is the Merry Drinker, or the Jovial Toper, by the world-renowned Frans Hals. Among the many other interesting articles to be seen here are these colorful examples of the world-famous Delftware. Delftware originated in Delft, Holland, in the 16th century. It was a bold attempt to imitate the costly porcelains brought from the Far East by the old Dutch navigators. At first, the famous blue color known as Delft blue was used exclusively, and although other colors have since been added, Delft blue is still the prevailing color. England began to manufacture Delftware in the early part of the 17th century, and today it vies with Holland as the important center of manufacture. The housewives of Amsterdam vie with one another in their collections of exquisite pieces of china and porcelain, some of which were brought to Holland by the East India merchantmen and have since been handed down from generation to generation. In a private residence, it is our privilege to photograph an original portrait of a beautiful young lady who is an ancestor of the man who now directs our attention to her. As lay critics of art, we regard this remote and unsung portrait as one of the most beautiful that we have ever seen. Although the old Dutch masters have contributed much to the art and culture of mankind, we cannot conclude our glimpses of Amsterdam without a word of praise for the industrious Dutch artisans who built a great city on reclaimed land from the sea. And it is with this thought that we say farewell to Old Amsterdam.